let's just turn our attention to attitudes and actions. And this is a key component when we're talking about social thinking. In other words, how do I look at the whole picture rather than reduce it down to one or two key components? So first of all, let's just define our terms. Attitudes themselves are, interestingly enough, are a confluence of a variety of things. They are made up of feelings that we have. They are made up of beliefs that we hold about a particular situation or environmental situation or whatever, beliefs. And then the third thing is that they tend, these feelings and beliefs tend to predispose us to behave in a particular way. They predispose behavior. And this usually is directed at objects. You might say, I have a I have a reaction to some iconography in the Catholic Church, for example, just statues in general. You might have an attitude about people, obviously. We have plenty of attitudes about people, and obviously events, which have been a big part of even the past political season that we're now just getting out of. So, for example, we may feel dislike for a person because we believe he or she is mean, and as a result, we act unfriendly toward that person. So you have the feelings and beliefs that predisposes certain behavior toward the object, person, or event itself. Now, oftentimes, attitudes predict behaviors. Predict behaviors. Activists on both sides of the debate about the reality or dangers of climate change know that the public attitudes affect public policies, and are so aiming to persuade in that particular way. So we know that attitudes will lead to certain behaviors, and generally speaking, even the predisposition of the writer of your book or the particular chapter you're in shows you how they approach it, even by the words they choose. So one of the things that they talked about was climate change people, and the word that and the word they used for people who oppose them or do not buy into this pervasive human-caused climate change is what they referred to as climate change deniers. One of the things that you have to be aware of when we're talking about in social psych is that we frame the debate by the words we choose. And oftentimes the author you're reading will tip their hand in terms of which direction they lean attitudinally by the words they choose for people that do not see the world that they do. So, by words we choose. And so in this case, in your chapter, the author, I would be willing to bet that the author thinks that climate change, human-caused climate change, is a imminent danger to humanity. On the other hand, because of that stance that they take, then the people who oppose them or do not see the data the way they do, they see them as deniers. Instead of saying people who do not support human-caused climate change, that's a very different phraseology, isn't it? It sounds differently. So climate change people are intelligent, non-denying people. Climate change deniers are unintelligent and therefore not worthy of respect. Now, there are two key directions that can happen. First of all, the peripheral route, persuasion. And there are a number of programs, even on TV, on cable. Whale Wars is a good example of the people that are fighting the fight against whale hunting. This really does prey on one's feelings. And so therefore, it is a quicker route to get action that oftentimes people will respond to. Spokesmen on the radio and TV oftentimes also are a peripheral route, and pitchmen, if you are familiar with that, somebody who pitches a product. I just noticed a few days ago that Tim Tebow was actually a pitchman or a spokesman for TiVo, which and that's essentially what advertisers know all too well, is that affinity or reaction or positive feelings that are evoked by a particular spokesperson will flow over into their particular product. Now, the second one is a central route persuasion, and because of that, central route persuasion works off of data and logic and rationale. It often produces far longer lasting change, but it takes longer for these attitudes to be established using the central route persuasion. The other key point to keep in mind is that attitudes affect actions that also in turn affect attitudes. So it really is a matter of where you enter, if you want to look at it this way as a circle, and you put attitudes up here, and I know it's kind of hard to see, attitudes and actions down here. It really is a matter of where you enter the circle, but you will impact both in seeming ways. So I change my actions, and what will happen is slowly my attitudes will begin to change. If I just simply say I will change my attitude to be more informed, more rationally based, then actions will follow. So one of the key components to remember is that when an attitude is stable, specific to the behavior, and easily recalled, that is when it will affect actions specifically. And so when I have less to do, minimal effort is required, and when the attitude is relatively stable and specific to a particular behavior. So for example, I have a attitude about church. My attitude is church is a positive influence in my life, and it leads, because it is a stable attitude of mine, it is specific to my behavior of going to church, and it is easily recalled. I do it on a regular basis. So attitude and actions are interactive with one another, and remember, when we talk about interact, we're talking about one impacts the other while the other impacts the one. And so this cycle is a very common one to see, at least in social psychology.